بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد وآله. This is lesson 3 of our methodological melody series entitled The Bridge. In the previous lesson, we spoke about the role of the sacred hierarchy in the ummatic body, that it acts as the skeletal system, providing structure, strength, and protection. Without a skeleton, where is the spine of the ummah? This is not a rhetorical use of metaphor. It is an illustration of the real connection between the world of forms and the world of meanings. One of the biggest problems we face in the modern era is the fixation on forms. What is dunya but materialism? And what is the point of shunning it but to actualize within the human soul the ability to perceive and embody meaning? Can there even be life without meaning? Even the people who have material wealth lament the loss of meaning. And so, just as dunya is representative of matter over meaning, so is the celestial realm representative of meaning over matter. The true reality of the temporal is that it is the counter image of the eternal. Hence, without a reconciliation between the opposing realities of the physical and spiritual, the human being cannot achieve harmony within himself. This recognition is the entry gate to understanding the centrality of the Sharia in our lives, for it is the bridge between meanings and forms. And thus, through it, we find harmony in our humanness and inculcate balance and symmetry in our physical and spiritual realities. This alignment is what is known in the Sunnah as afiyah, or well-being. Everyone is seeking well-being, but not everyone knows how to attain it. What is Islam? It is both istislam, meaning submission to God, and salam, meaning peace. But before we can truly offer that calm, concordant composure to others, we must find it in ourselves. The people of the dunya are the people of forms devoid of meaning. That cannot possibly be well-being. The people of the hereafter are the people of meaning embodied in forms. These are the people destined for divine grace. How does the Sharia inculcate balance and alignment of our physical and spiritual realities? Marriage is a prime example of how we find harmony in our humanness, and that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described it as the fulfillment of half of our religion and instructed us to be conscious of God in the remaining half. إذا تزوج العبد فقد استكمل نصف دينه فليتق الله في النصف الباقي. This comes back to the sunnah of attachment and detachment that we mentioned in our lesson on the post-Ramadan diet. When we attach to things in accordance to the sunnah, the reciprocal is afiyah, well-being. Marriage should be a cause for one's physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. This is its underlying essence in the Sharia, and thus dictates when divorce is the proper legal course of action. The Sharia is much more than rulings. Then, when we have taqwa in the other half, as the hadith states, we perfect the sunnah of detachment. This imbues yaqeen, certainty in the promise of God. The combination of these two, attachment and detachment, yaqeen and afiyah, is the perfection of the Adamic prophetic self. In the Tarbawi Tafsir, our new subgenre of exegesis, we classify the Quranic address into three: Adamic, Abrahamic, and Muhammadan. We further subclassify the Adamic address into the Adamic satanic, Adamic human, and Adamic prophetic, which is, of course, our goal. This classification is significant because it leads us to an understanding of how the Quran and Sunnah, when understood in the conjunction of their outer and inward realities, elucidate the integrated nature of the Sharia, and that it is inclusive of all facets of the human condition. In other words, we don't need anything outside of the Sharia or in addition to the Sharia to find complete well-being and rectification of our state. The integration of the sunan of detachment and attachment is the underlying spiritual framework that permeates the Sharia. This is how it reconciles forms and meanings. The Sunnah rears us to detach from the dunya to ensure a perpetual connection with God that supersedes and defines all other forms of attachment. This elevates us from the Adamic human to the Adamic prophetic. These two terms, the Sunnah of detachment and the Sunnah of attachment, are also new terminologies developed by Fitra Foundation. In an upcoming lesson, we expound on the fundamental nature of these two concepts, informing spiritual cognition, their basis in our classical heritage, and the widespread practical effects upon Muslims consequent to methodological distortions at the elemental level. We'll discuss critical concepts, such as the nature of religiosity itself and the prevalent cultural distortions that have crept into the moral foundations of our faith. Now, as the Sharia is the bridge between meanings and forms, corollary to this reality is the role of the ulama in the ummah, for without them, we cannot know the Sharia. Thus, in a metaphysically elemental sense, not just rhetorically, the sacred hierarchy of the ulama is the means of bringing harmony to the outer and inner dimensions of the human experience, both individually and collectively. Are the ulama doing that? Critical question, isn't it? Do they have the capability of doing that? Another important question. Are our seminaries rearing students who know their mission and are equipped to fulfill it? Are we as a community receptive of scholarship taking their proper role? Perhaps no one is asking these questions, but at Fitra Foundation we are. And not only that, we're answering them too. Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, did not single-handedly revive the Islamic sciences, nor did Salahuddin al-Ayyubi single-handedly liberate Jerusalem. It was an army of soldiers of the soul that brought victory to this ummah. The sacred hierarchy is the skeletal system of the ummatic body. Now, if we extend this analogy, many more important matters become clear. And it shows just how magnificent the prophetic word, the prophetic speech is. He was given an extraordinary capability to encompass huge meanings in a few words. أوتي جوامع الكلم صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم. A body cannot function without a brain. But even then, the basic brain functions of the autonomic nervous system entail no more than voluntary physiological functions operating without conscious control. There is a pulse, but is there real life? Is form without meaning real life? يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه وأنه إليه تحشرون. Notice how the verse says that God and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam call us to true life, and that when we don't respond, it is God Himself who will intervene between us and our hearts. The embedded meaning in that is that the breach of divine trust is the cause of calamity. When we reduce ummatic leadership to anything less than the prophetic inheritors of the methodological tier, the ummah functions either in a passive comatose state, or alternatively, when disaster strikes, in an active seizure state, where chaos reigns over the body. It is moving, but not getting anywhere. A body that has no conscious control will be out of balance with the world around it. But it isn't psychology that will bring it back into alignment. It is the Sharia. As mentioned in the previous lesson, psychology is not a remedy, but in fact a response to the chaos that ensues when the sacred hierarchy is not in effect. The methodological tier, or what we call tier 1 ulama for short, are the mind of the ummah. They are the command center of the body. The da'wah tier 2 ulama, are the heart of the ummah. Just like the physical heart pumps blood throughout the body, the da'wah tier is responsible for disseminating guidance throughout the community. Tier 3, student teachers, are the limbs, and they make up the bulk of the sacred hierarchy. Broadly speaking, I would say approximately 5% of scholars fall under the manhaj tabaqa, methodological. About 20% fall under the da'wah tabaqa, and up to and even more than 75% fall under the teaching tabaqa. But as mentioned previously, we have a big problem in the teaching tier because despite there being some expertise there, many of them, if not most of them, are severed from the sacred hierarchy and thus very often do not harness sacred knowledge ethically with justice and ihsan. Social media is abound with such examples. As for the Muslim masses, all of you are critically important because you represent the cells of the body. Everyone's contribution is important, but the functioning of the body cannot be truly impactful until everyone takes their proper place and works in unison. What is the soul of this blessed body? It is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. That is why only his true lovers care for this ummah and are pained by its pain. That spirit inside us is the very pulse of the ummah. It is the prophetic soul that unites us. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم مثل الجسد إذا اشتكى عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. The parable of the believers in their affection, mercy, and empathy toward one another is like a body. If any of its members complain of pain, the rest of the body responds with sleeplessness and fever. Now, if you want to envision a body that has no mind, what does that mean? What does that look like? What do we call that? Insanity, correct? That is the state of our ummah when we deny the sacred hierarchy and fail to follow the prophetic inheritors of tier 1. Think of the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, who chants, "If I only had a brain, are we a nation of straw men?" Look how incessantly we work to seek acceptance from the imperial other. Is our occupation with rebuilding and expanding our own tradition even 5% of the same effort? Look how easily we abandon the powerful intellectual cogency and coherence of the theological, moral, and legal tenets of our tradition in favor of hollow opportunists whose only claim to leadership is an anonymous number of indiscriminate followers. Now, I want you to envision a body that has no heart. What do we call that? Harshness, cruelty. Or in the world of Oz, it is the Tin Man who carries an axe, truncating many in the Ummah, breaking them down. We all know them. They repel instead of attract, filled with insult instead of insight, of sinful speech instead of words of light, motivated by the political instead of the prophetic, spreading discord instead of divine da'wah, marked by self-importance instead of mercy. What happens when we allow celebrity preachers, influencers, and online pundits to populate the tiers of the sacred hierarchy? We turn the heart of the ummah to stone. We become a community that loses its moral compass, a people led by ego instead of erudition. We become rusted and immobile, like the Tin Man. We begin to think that the metal of weapons is more powerful than the metal of the soul. We lose the spiritual power of change. Change requires a mind, a prophetic mind. Change requires a heart, a prophetic heart. We need to be the change that our prophet wants to see in the world. Now, I want you to envision a body with limbs that are moving without the regulation of the brain, nor the guidance of the heart. In the realm of forms, this might look like epileptic seizure, movements characterized by chaos. That is what happens when student teachers who make up the bulk of the sacred hierarchy are severed from it. There is action, but it is scattered, haphazard, disorganized, and on social media, especially anarchic and self aggrandizing. Social media followership is absolutely not a divine testimony, but rather the fluctuating fandom of those who move with the wind of caprice, like the swaying of cornstalks in a field of dead forms. Are we a nation that follows straw men? Or are we an ummah led by men and women of realities, more momentous than the mountains that stabilize the earth? وجعلنا في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بهم وجعلنا فيها فجاجا سبلا لعلهم يهتدون. And we placed firm mountains upon the earth so that it does not shake with them, and made it in broad pathways so that they may find their way. In the end times, reality reversals will shake the earth. Hissan wa ma'nan. The people of meaning are the people of God. They are the anchors of truth. Mountains may shift, men of realities stand firm. History, before ever being written in a book, is penned in the hearts of men. Is it political leadership that will save this ummah, or prophetic leadership? In our tradition, real change is evolution, not revolution. We believe that it is the inward that brings about real, outward, lasting change. It is inward revolution that causes outward evolution, not vice versa. Otherwise, change is short lived, a scarecrow, seemingly intimidating at first, but turns out to be nothing more than a passing historical hallucination. The reason our ummah is suffering today is because of its negligence yesterday. And whether or not the ummah will thrive tomorrow is a direct function of what we do today. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Imam al-Shafi'i said, we find fault in our times, while the defect is in us. نعيب زماننا والعيب فينا. Now, all this leads to the definition of Islamic scholarship. Al-Habib Abu Bakr al-Mashhur, rahimahullah ta'ala, delineated the conception of human excellence as the distinguishing factor between the side of evil and the side of good, saying, عندهم العقل السليم في الجسم السليم وعندنا العقل السليم في القلب السليم. That is, for them, a sound intellect is found in a sound body. And for us, sound intellect is found in a sound heart. This is the reality of true scholarship on both the individual and collective scale. On the ummatic scale, the sound mind leads the sound heart, which leads to sound action. The methodological tier is the sound mind. It must lead the sound heart, which is the da'wah tier. Then sound action can be actualized through the limbs, the teaching tier, and the remainder of the ummah. Then all cells can function in health and harmony, in yaqeen and afiyah. On an individual scale, this sequence is reversed. Sound action is the beginning of the path, which leads to a sound heart, which leads to a sound mind. This is prophetic inheritance. A prophetic mind spawned of a prophetic heart, cultivated with the seeds of righteous action. The scholars who tread the path of micro guidance, learning and applying the Sharia throughout their lives with pinpoint precision, become the vehicle by which the collective is macro guided, and the lineage of scholarship lives on in future generations. This is the tarbiyah cycle, from the individual to the collective, and then from the collective back to the individual. Metafiqh does not look at the individual alone. It evaluates the community as a whole, all of its members, each of their roles, and envisions the ummatic body within the structure of the Sharia. It is an unprecedented initiative. Alhamdulillah. Why? Because the Ummah is in the modern era is living in unprecedented historical context. As such, true scholarship must rise to the task. If we don't connect the circle by taking true scholars as the mind and heart of this Ummah, we halt the tarbiyah cycle. Then there is no mind to direct the heart and no heart to pump light throughout its veins, and instead its blood is spilled. If we don't uphold the sacred hierarchy, we tear the ummatic body apart. Its limbs severed from its trunk, its heart and mind enslaved by the demonic, its prophetic soul in deep pain. As we witness with our own eyes this celestial reality of meaning play out in the earthly, bloody form, there should be no longer any doubt that the outer calamities of the Ummah mirror its inward calamities, and that the sacred hierarchy must be reinstated for the revival of this Ummah. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. This verse in Surah Al-Hashr is actually about the expulsion of the treacherous Jews of Medina who were run out of their homes due to their betrayal of the state treaty. Today, who is being run out of their homes? By whom? The end times are marked by reality reversals. Is there a betrayal worse than the breach of divine trust? Allahumma aslih warham wa farrij an ummati Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. An understanding of the mirror principle further unveils a critical reality about our role, each of us, in the ummatic body. It may be difficult to acknowledge that when any of us functions outside the sacred hierarchy, we are actually assisting the aggressor against ourselves. يخربون بيوتهم بأيديهم وأيدي المؤمنين فاعتبروا يا أولي الأبصار. Do you know what the worst enslavement that imperialism imposed upon this ummah? It was not the robbing Muslim peoples of their land, language, and customs. No, it was the primary deception of making the most powerful and salvific civilization in human history feel like helpless victims. In the end of the story, the Wizard of Oz turned out to be powerless, like the magicians of Pharaoh in the face of Musa alayhi salam. And the Scarecrow realized that he always had a brain. The Tin Man already had a heart. The lion was already brave. Oz turned out to be no more than the delusional dream of dunya, attempting to veil the celestial reality. We are the ummah of Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. وَمَنْ يَكُمْ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ نُصْرَتُهُ إِنْ تَلْقَهُ الْأُسْدُ فِي الْآجَامِ تَجِمِ. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. Surah Muhammad. How deeply contradictory it is to point with pride at the courageous men, women, and children whose inward spiritual strength rivals the outward militias of materialism, but to then turn around and feed our ummah the delusion of Oz, the deception of matter over meaning. What are we saying? That God is plan B? That we only believe that the divine is the source of our strength when we're abandoned by dunya? That if given the opportunity, we would draw upon the very same materialism that seeks to destroy us? Or that spirituality is just a brand name that we slap onto every product that we wish to sell? What do we really believe? Matter over meaning? Meaning over matter? Or the harmonious marriage of the two? There is no spirit without the law, and there is no law without the spirit. That is the Sharia. When we reclaim our identity and initiate scholarly guided introspection, when we humbly admit our role in the making of our own plight, when we turn to God in recognition of our individual and collective role in the state of the world, not just our own people, when we have spiritual leaders who illuminate the way, when we are no longer reactive bystanders, but proactive participants in a coherent faith community, then and only then will these shackles be uncoupled. The most difficult step to change is asking the right questions, because very often the reason we don't ask them is to avoid their answer. Sometimes the most simple realities are the most difficult to see. The only path to truth is honesty. لا ينجي إلا الصدق. An ummah that is not directed by sound mind is led by the insane. An ummah that is not guided by sound heart is led by the cold-blooded. Such an ummah cannot possibly be steered toward sound action. Today is not the ummatic body being attacked by what can only be described as a cold-blooded, insane murder. The outward calamities of the ummah mirror its inward calamities. We will continue to repeat it until it sinks in. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. This admonition should haunt us just as deeply as do the unbearable images of our brethren ensnared in the lair of beasts. Have we done our part? Do we even know our role? And if we don't, do we know who can tell us? Now do we understand the significance of the sacred hierarchy? The role of scholarship is nusratul ummah, and the victory of the ummah is through its true scholars. In fact, the victory of all people is through this ummah. We are the nation of the Shahada. La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. The Sharia is the bridge between meanings and forms, and through it we find harmony in our humanness, along with balance and symmetry in our physical and spiritual realities. The Sharia is a union of the Adamic fitrah and the prophetic fiqh. Sayyidina Nafisa Seminary isn't just a place of learning. It is an institution of self-development through the Sharia. This is the legacy of our forebears among the prophetic household. The Ba'alawi way is that of ilm, amal, ikhlas, and nasiha. We model much of our curriculum at Sayyidina Nafisa Seminary around that of Dar al-Mustafa in Tarim, Yemen. Fitra Foundation not only functions within the sacred hierarchy, but to our knowledge, we are the only organization in the West actively working to restore it. Why have we chosen this contribution? Because it is the single most significant step toward the revival of the Islamic sciences and the Ummah at large. قال الإمام عبد الله بن علوي الحداد: اعلم أن العلماء هم الرؤوس من الناس والوجوه فيهم، ومثلهم منهم مثل الملح من الطعام، يصلح الطعام بصلاحه ويفسد بفساده. Imam al-Haddad rahimahullah ta'ala said, know that the ulama are the heads of the people and their face of nobility. Their likeness among them is as salt is to food. Food is rectified by the presence of salt and ruined by its absence. There is such profound wisdom in this statement because it not only speaks to the importance of the sacred hierarchy and the rarity and nobility of true scholarship, but also of its potent transformative power within the Ummah and the destructive consequences of the breach of divine trust. Perhaps the Wizard of Oz has many followers on social media. Perhaps he is just a master of illusion. Perhaps his followers are just treading the yellow brick road to the land of nowhere. Some seek the emerald city of dollars. Others seek the city of knowledge. We are on our way to the city of the Green Dome. I do hope that Dorothy has now discovered that it is only the scholars of the hereafter that can lead us home. And truly, there is no place like home. If you're interested in decolonization, perhaps you ought to first understand what was taken from you. How was the wicked witch of the West destroyed or defeated? Some fight with fire. Others fight with water, pure Kauthar water. Which is stronger? Some fight out of hatred. Others fight out of love. Which is stronger? إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. We are the Ummah of Ahlul Bayt. على نبينا وآل بيت النبوة أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. Through the love of Ahlul Bayt, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. عندهم الغاية تبرر الوسيلة. عندنا الغاية تقرر الوسيلة. عندهم العقل السليم في الجسم السليم. عندنا العقل السليم في القلب السليم. إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. This is not allegory, my friends. This is real. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله نور الأنوار وسر الأسرار وترياق الأغيار ومفتاح باب اليسار سيدنا محمد المختار وآله الأطهار وأصحابه الأخيار عدد نعم الله وإفضاله والحمد لله رب العالمين.